Hello everyone, I hope you have performed well in your second Anubhav test. In this section, we will be discussing geography question of the test. So let's start with the first question, that is question 42, right? So it says, in the map shown below, rivers labeled 1, 2, 3 and 4 are respectively. So basically a map is given and some rivers are shown on that map and we have to identify those rivers, right? So first of all, this is a question from the topic drainage system of India. Drainage system, right? So if you analyze the trend of previous year question, almost 1 to 2 questions have been asked from this topic in almost every year, right? So this topic is important from prelims exam point of view, right? And if you see the previous year question, UPSC has been focusing on major rivers and their tributaries. Most of the question from this chapter or topic has been focused on major rivers and their tributaries, right? So that's why a question based on river and their tributaries has been put in your test, right? Now one can say that why all of a sudden this new format of question based on map from this topic, right? So because till now UPSC has been asking from this topic, the type of question that UPSC has been asking from this topic is basically worded question, not map based question, right? But then the rationale behind asking such a question again goes back to the previous year question. If you see the question that was asked in the prelims exam 2024, it was asking you to arrange tributaries of Ganga that meet Ganga river downstream Prayagraj from west to east, right? So although map was not given in the question, it was basically demanding a fair amount of idea regarding map, right? So that's why such a question has been put in your test, right? Now let's try to solve the question. So at the very first glance, one can easily identify that these rivers are basically Indus and their tributaries, right? They are all located in Jammu, Kashmir and Himachal areas and Punjab areas. So they have to be Indus and their tributaries, right? So if you have read about Indus and their tributaries, you must be knowing that the order of these rivers, that is Indus and their tributaries, from south to north is something like this. The southernmost river among them is Satluj, then comes Beas, then Ravi, then Chenab, then Jhelum, and finally Indus is placed northernmost, right? So this is the order of Indus and their tributaries from south to north, right? So let's try to solve this question using this knowledge, right? So here the river that is labeled 1 is the southernmost river, so it has to be Satluj, right? So that means this river is Satluj, right? Then this will be Beas, this will be Ravi, then this river labeled 3 has to be Chenab, right? So this will be Chenab. Then this river 4 is coming not to the river level 3, right? So this has to be Jhelum. Then finally the northernmost river, which is shown river 2 here, has to be Indus, right? So the correct answer here will be first river is Satluj, second is Indus, third is Chenab and fourth is Jhelum. So the correct answer here will be A, Satluj, Indus, Chenab and Jhelum, right? Now suppose one does not remember this information, the order of placement of these rivers, then how to approach this question in that case, right? So in that case one can use the knowledge of origin of these rivers, right? So we know that Satluj originates in Mansarovar in Tibet region, right? Then Beas and Ravi, both of them originate in near Rohtang Pass in Himachal Pradesh, right? Then Chenab originates in near Baralacha Pass, that is also in Himachal, right? Then Jhelum originates near Verinag in Jammu and Kashmir, and finally Indus originates near a place called Bokharchu in Tibet, right? So basically two of these rivers, Indus and Satluj, are originating in Tibet, right? Now let's see the map given here. So if you see here, out of all the rivers given, only two rivers, that is this one and this one, are originating in Tibetan region, right? So that means they have to be Satluj and Indus, right? And if you compare these two rivers, 1 and 2, second river is obviously looking larger than first river. So second has to be Indus and first has to be Satluj, right? So we have identified first and second river. Now if you see these three rivers have their origin in Himachal Pradesh region, right? This area will be Himachal Pradesh. So they have to be, there are only three rivers here that are originating in Himachal Pradesh, that is Chenab, Beas and Ravi, right? So these three rivers have to be Beas, Ravi and Chenab, right? And a simple comparison among these three will say that this river level 3 is larger among these three rivers, right? And we know that Chenab is the largest tributary of Indus. So this river that is level 3 here has to be Chenab, right? So we identified the third river also. Now this river that is labeled 4 here is originating in Jammu Kashmir, and there is only one tributary of Indus, major tributary of Indus, that is originating in Jammu Kashmir. So this has to be Jhelum, right? So using the knowledge of origin of rivers also, you could have approached this question, right? So the learning that you should draw from this question is that whenever you are studying any topic of geography, you should try to use maps and diagrams as much as possible, right? If you use maps and diagrams, it will be easy for you to memorize the information, understand the concept and retain the information for longer time, right? And of late UPSC has been putting a tilt towards map based knowledge, right, as it was evident in UPSC 2024 prelims. Now let's move on to our next question, that is question 43. So this is our question 43. It says, consider the following statements regarding monsoonal rainfall in India, right? So first of all, it's a question from the chapter Climate of India. Climate of India. This again is a very important chapter in Indian geography from prelims exam point of view, right? You can expect 1 to 2 questions almost every year from this topic, right? And this particular question has been framed on topic Indian monsoon, right? So let's read the statements. Statement 1 says, Central India gets rainfall primarily from Bay of Bengal branch of Indian southwest monsoon. Statement 2 says, Arakan Hills deflect a big portion of Bay of Bengal branch towards the Indian subcontinent. So this question is basically trying to test the knowledge regarding arrival of monsoon in Indian landmass, right? So let's first see the underlying concept and then we will come back to our question, right? So this is a map of India, right? And let's say somewhere here is the equator, right? So we all know that southwest monsoon approaches India from southwest direction, something like this, right? So as soon as monsoonal winds reach the tip of this peninsular India, the shape of this peninsular India is such that these winds automatically get bifurcated into two branches. One branch moves further in this direction and this becomes Bay of Bengal branch. Bay of Bengal branch, and one portion moves towards this direction and this becomes Arabian Sea branch. Arabian Sea branch, right? Now let's see what happens to Arabian Sea branch. So Arabian Sea branch advances like this and it first hits the Kerala coast, right? And what happens here, as soon as it hits the Kerala coast, it encounters the Western Ghat that is standing atoll here like this, right? So Western Ghat obstructs these winds and these winds rise along the Western Ghat and they cause orographic rainfall in these areas, right? Now rest of the winds of Arabian Sea branch, they move along the western coast, right, and they come up to here, right, this Mumbai coast. So here what they encounter is Narmada and Tapi Rift Valley that is located something like this, right? We all know that Narmada and Tapi are only two major peninsular rivers that flow from east to west, right? All other major peninsular rivers flow from west to east, and the reason that Narmada and Tapi flow from east to west is because they flow in a rift valley, right? This is the rift valley. So what exactly is rift valley? If I describe rift valley in very simple terms, they are basically low lying depression in earth crust, right? So this rift valley provides a passage to these monsoonal winds. So these monsoonal winds then enter in this rift valley and they reach up to central India and cause rainfall in these areas, right? Rest of the wind of this Arabian Sea branch advances further. It hits the Gujarat coast and then it moves further like this along Aravalli. So if you see, Aravallis are located here, something like this. So rest of the Arabian Sea branch winds, they move along Aravalli, something like this, and they cause rainfall in these areas. So basically Arabian Sea branch of southwest monsoon gets divided into three sub branches. First is causing rainfall along Western Ghat. Second is entering into the rift valley of Narmada and Tapi and causing rainfall in central India. And third is moving further towards Rajasthan and Delhi and causing rainfall in these areas, right? Now let's see our question statement. The question says Central India gets rainfall primarily from Bay of Bengal branch, right? So this is not correct. We saw that Central India is getting rainfall from Arabian Sea branch, right? So that means this statement is incorrect. Now second statement says Arakan Hills deflect a big portion of the Bay of Bengal branch towards the Indian subcontinent. So let's say if this is correct or not, right? So now we will see what happens to Bay of Bengal branch. Bay of Bengal branch advances like this and it reaches up to here, right? And as soon as it reaches near Myanmar coast, it encounters this hill called Arakan Hills. Arakan Hills, which is located along the coast of Myanmar, right? So Arakan Hills obstructs these monsoonal winds and they rise along the height of Arakan Hills and cause rainfall in these areas, and some of the portion of these winds gets deflected by Arakan Hills towards Indian subcontinent, right? So this is the reason this southwest monsoon enters Bangladesh and northern India from southeasterly direction, right? These winds are entering into Indian landmass from southwesterly direction, but this branch is entering into India from southeasterly direction because they are coming after getting deflected by Arakan Hills, right? So our second statement that Arakan Hills deflect a big portion of Bay of Bengal branch, this is correct, right? So that means the correct answer here will be D. Statement 1 is incorrect, but statement 2 is correct. Now let's move on to our next question, that is question 44. It says consider the following pairs. In first column some UNESCO World Heritage sites are given, and in second column their location in the hill ranges are given, right? So let's see them one by one. First is Ajanta Hills, Ajanta Caves, and here it is written Makal Range, right? So Ajanta Caves, as we all know, they are located in Maharashtra, and they are located in actually Ajanta Hills, and that's why they are called Ajanta Caves, right? But Makal Range, if you see, they are located in Madhya Pradesh. So that means this pair is not correctly matched, right? For better clarity, let's see them on map. So Ajanta Caves are located somewhere here, right? And Makal Range is located somewhere here. This is Makal Range and this is Ajanta, right? So that means our first pair is not correctly matched, right? Now let's see the second pair, that is Charaidev Moidams. Right? Charaidev Moidams have been in news recently because they have been added to the list of UNESCO World Heritage Sites in India recently only, and that's why they have been in news, right? So they are basically mound burial system of Ahom dynasty of Assam, and most of the prominent news articles have been covering that they are located in Assam in Patkai ranges, right? So for better clarity, let's see them on map. So Charaidev Moidams are located somewhere here, and Patkai range is also located something like this, right? So that means our second pair is correctly matched. Charaidev Moidams are located in Patkai ranges in Assam, right? Now let's see the third pair. Third pair is basically Bhimbetka rock shelters, and second column says Satpura range, right? So we all know that Bhimbetka rock shelters are located in Madhya Pradesh, and they are famous for their prehistoric rock paintings, right? And these rock shelters are located in actually Vindhya range, right? So let's see them on map. They are located somewhere here, Vindhya range, and Satpura is located latitudinally below this Vindhya range. So these are Vindhya and this is Satpura. So that means Bhimbetka rock shelters are not located in Satpura range. Third is also not correctly matched. So that means correct answer here will be B, 2 only, right? So again, the learning that you should draw is whenever you are studying any topic or any prominent place, right, you have to see them on map. Geography is all about maps actually, right? As much as you inculcate maps and diagrams in studying geography, it will be easier for you to attempt such type of questions, right? Now let's move on to our next question, that is question 45. It says in the context of Earth's heat balance, consider the following statements, right? So statements are about insolation, albedo radiation, terrestrial radiation, etc. So first of all, this is a question from the chapter climatology. This is a very, very important chapter from prelims exam point of view. 1 to 2 questions are asked from this topic almost every year, right? So you have to prepare this chapter in very detail, right? And so that's why this question has been put in your test, and this particular question is based on Earth's heat balance, right? So let's see the underlying concept first, and then we will come back to our question. So what happens that, let's say this is our earth, and this is earth's atmosphere, and let's say this is sun. So sun keeps radiating solar radiation, right? These are solar radiation coming from sun, right? So these solar radiation reach up to earth and earth atmosphere, right? So that part of solar radiation that reaches up to earth and earth atmosphere is called insolation. Insolation is basically incoming solar radiation, short form of incoming solar radiation, right? So this is called insolation. So some part of these insolation get directly reflected by Earth's atmosphere and also by Earth, right? So there are things like ice, trees and all those on Earth which reflect back this coming insolation, right? So this reflected radiation is called albedo, right? Rest of the radiation reaches up to Earth's surface, right? Rest of the radiation reaches up to Earth's surface, and that is used by the Earth for getting heated up, right? So through these radiation insolation that reaches up to Earth gets heated up, and once the Earth gets sufficiently heated, it starts radiating its own radiation, right? So once the Earth is sufficiently heated, it becomes a radiating body and starts to radiate heat, right? And this heat is called, this radiation is called terrestrial radiation. Right? So these are three forms of radiation with respect to Earth's heat balance: incoming solar radiation or insolation, albedo and terrestrial radiation, right? Let's also understand one more concept that will be used here, that is related to radiation. So it's a there is one very fact regarding radiation, that energy of a radiation will be inversely proportional to its wavelength. That means higher the wavelength of a radiation, lower will be the energy, and shorter the wavelength of a radiation, higher will be the energy, right? Now let's see, let's come back to this Earth's heat budget concept, right? So sun is radiating heat in the form of insolation, and these have high energy. Insolation have high energy, right? Because they are directly coming from sun, right? So that means their wavelength will be short. Right? We have discussed just now that if energy is high, then wavelength will be short, right? So insolation will be in the form of short wavelength radiation, right? Then this part, the albedo part, that is getting reflected back by the Earth and Earth atmosphere directly without being used, they are actually insolation itself. They are just getting reflected by Earth and Earth atmosphere without being used. That means energy of insolation has not been used, and all the energy are getting reflected, right? So albedo will also have high energy just like insolation. So that means this will also have high energy, and hence they will have short wavelength. Wavelength will be low, their energy will be high. So that means albedo will also have short wavelength, right? Now let's see what happens to terrestrial radiation. So rest of the insolation which reaches up to Earth is used in heating Earth, right? And after being heated, Earth starts to radiate terrestrial radiation. That means some energy of insolation has gone into heating Earth, right? And only excess energy are being reflected back, radiated back in the form of terrestrial radiation. So energy of terrestrial radiation will be low because some part has gone into heating, right? So its wavelength will be high. That means terrestrial radiation will be in the form of long wavelength radiation, right? So insolation will be in the form of short wavelength, albedo will be in the form of short wavelength, but terrestrial radiation will be in the form of long wavelength radiations. Now let's come back to our question. The first statement says insolation received by the earth is in the form of short wavelength. So this is correct. First statement is correct. Albedo reflected back by the earth is in the form of long wavelength. This is not correct. We just saw that albedo will be in the form of short wavelength, not long wavelength. Third statement, terrestrial radiation radiated by earth is in the form of long wavelength, right? So this is correct. Terrestrial radiation will be in the form of long wavelength. That means only 1 and 3 are correct. So the correct answer here will be C, 1 and 3 only, right? Now let's move to the next question, that is question 46. It says with reference to manganese, consider the following statements. So first of all, this is a question from the topic distribution of resources. Distribution of resources, right? And if you analyze the trend of previous year question, UPSC has been focusing on critical minerals in the recent past, right? So that's why a question based on manganese has been put in your test. Manganese is also a critical mineral, particularly for India, because they are important for dry cell batteries, right? Now let's read the statements. First statement says China is largest producer of manganese in the world. This is not correct. China is not the largest producer of manganese in the world. The top 3 producer of manganese in the world are South Africa, second is Gabon, and third is Australia, right? So South Africa, Gabon and Australia are top 3 producer of manganese in the world. So first statement is not correct. Second statement, India is fully dependent on imports for its manganese requirements. So you could have easily guessed that this statement cannot be correct, right? So although India is a major importer of manganese, it is not fully dependent because even in lesser quantities, some manganese will be produced domestically. It is obvious, right? And if you see the top 3 producer states of manganese in India are Madhya Pradesh, then Maharashtra, and then Odisha. These 3 states produce significant amount of manganese in India, although India is majorly dependent on imports for its manganese requirement, but not fully dependent, right? So that means none of the statements given are correct. So the correct answer here will be D, neither 1 nor 2, right? Now let's move on to our next question, that is 47. It says a ship has to travel from Arabian Sea to Mediterranean Sea. Which of the following water bodies will come in its way if it takes the shortest possible sea route, right? And some water bodies are mentioned here, that is Strait of Hormuz, Aden, Oman, and etc., right? So this is basically a map based question and it can easily be solved by looking at the map of Arabian Sea and Mediterranean Sea. So let's see the map of this region. So this is the region Arabian Sea, and this is Mediterranean Sea. This is Mediterranean Sea. So let's say the ship is located here. Let's say this is our ship and it has to travel from here to here, right? So this ship has two routes. First is by going around Africa. So it can take this route and come all the way to Mediterranean Sea like this, right? But this will not be the shortest route, right? The question is mentioning that ship has to take the shortest route. So what will be the shortest route? The shortest route will go something like this. The ship can take this route and reach to Mediterranean Sea. This will be the shortest route, right? And now let's say what all water bodies will come in the way, right? So this, if you see, is Gulf of Aden, then there is one strait here that is called Bab el Mandeb Strait, right? Then this sea is called Red Sea, and there is one canal here that is very famous canal called Suez Canal, right? So Gulf of Aden, then Bab el Mandab Strait, then Red Sea, and then Suez Canal. These water bodies will come on the way. That means Gulf of Aden, then Bab el Mandab Strait, then Red Sea, and then Suez Canal will come in the way, right? If you see here, Red Sea and Suez Canal were easy to guess, right? If ship is crossing through Red Sea, it has to cross through Suez Canal in order to enter into Mediterranean Sea. So 5 and 6 could have been easily guessed, right? Along with these 5 and 6, Gulf of Aden and Bab el Mandeb Strait will also come on the way. So that means 2, 4, 5 and 6, C is the correct answer here, right? Let's see about Strait of Hormuz and Gulf of Oman, where exactly they are located. So if you see, this Gulf is called Gulf of Oman. Then there is one strait here that is called Strait of Hormuz. Then this sea is called Persian Gulf, right? But this route is blocked here by Iran, right? So ship cannot travel through these routes. So these water bodies will not come on the way, right? So this is basically a map based question. So the learning that you should draw from here is that you have to keep looking at the world map, and particularly two regions, right? First is these regions, that is Central Asia, these regions, and second is Southeast Asia. If you analyze the trend of map based question in the prelims examination, UPSC focuses on these two areas only, right? So you have to keep looking at these two areas particularly in order to memorize all the major geographical features, right? Now let's move on to our next question, that is question 48. It says, in the context of geomorphic processes, consider the following statements, right? First statement, weathering is a precondition, and second is about erosion. So first of all, this is a question from the topic geomorphology. This again is a very important chapter from prelims exam point of view. 1 to 2 questions are asked from this chapter almost every year, right? And if you analyze the trend of previous year question, UPSC has been focusing on two areas from this chapter. The first is exogenic forces and the second is endogenic forces. endogenic forces. Within exogenic forces, UPSC puts particular focus on weathering and erosion. And within these endogenic forces, UPSC puts a special focus on volcanism and earthquake. Right? So that's why a question based on weathering has been put in your test. Right? So let's see the underlying concept and then we will come back to our question. Right? So let's read the statement first. First statement says weathering is a precondition for erosion to take place. Second statement, erosion involves acquisition and transportation of rock debris. Right? So let's first see the underlying concept and then we will come back to our question. So first of all, let's understand what is erosion. So let's say a rock is placed at the earth's surface, right? And there are some moving agents such as air, water. Let's say air is moving in this direction. So what this moving air will do, it will pick some of the fragments of this rock and it will carry it along with it and transport it to some other place and drop it here, right? So this is what is called erosion. Erosion basically involves an element of transportation, right? What is weathering? Let's say another rock is kept here at the earth's surface. So weathering in very simple term is basically decomposition and disintegration of rocks by elements of weather and climate, right? So what happens that by the action of element of weather and climate, this rock gets disintegrated and decomposed into smaller fragments like this. This become fragmented. So this is called weathering, right? Weathering does not involve transportation, right? So the rock particles get loosened and they stay at the same place, right? This does not involve transport, right? So that means erosion involves an element of transportation, but weathering does not involve element of transportation, right? Now it's a common sense to think that once the rock is weathered, right, they are loosened into smaller particle, right? So once they are loosened into a smaller particle, it will be easier for moving agents such as air and water to pick the fragmented parts and move them away, right? So that means weathering can help in process of erosion, right? But it is not a precondition. It is not a precondition. This is not correct. Precondition means erosion cannot take place until weathering has taken place. This is not correct, right? If weathering has taken place, it will help in the process of erosion, right? But erosion can occur independently of weathering, right? Now let's come back to our question. The first statement says weathering is a precondition for erosion to take place. So this is not correct. Erosion can happen independently of weathering. Second statement, erosion involves acquisition and transportation of rock debris. So we have just seen that erosion involves an element of transportation. So this is correct. So that means the correct answer here will be D. Statement 1 is incorrect, but statement 2 is correct, right? Now let's move on to our next question, that is question 75. It says which of the following practices are consistent with the principle of sustainable agriculture, right? So first of all, this is a question from the topic agriculture, right? This is a very important topic from prelims exam point of view. 1 to 2 question, or in the recent year UPSC has been asking 2 questions from this topic almost every year, right? And if you see the trend of previous year question, in the recent past, UPSC has been focusing on sustainable agriculture. Most of the UPSC prelims question from this chapter agriculture has been based on the concept of sustainable agriculture. So that's why this question based on sustainable agriculture has been put in your test, right? So some practices are given and the question is asking which of them are consistent with the principle of sustainable agriculture, right? So let's first understand what exactly is sustainable agriculture. Sustainable agriculture. Sustainable agriculture is basically that type of farming which focuses on three objectives. First is protection of environment, then second is expansion of natural resources, then third is basically best use of non-renewable resources. So sustainable agriculture you can understand in very simple terms all those farming practices which promote these three objectives will come under the practice of sustainable agriculture. It should protect the environment, it should expand the natural resources, and it should make the best use of non-renewable resources, right? Now let's see the practices that have been given here, whether they fit into these objectives or not. So first is enhancing biodiversity around agricultural field to promote ecosystem services, right? This is correct. This will fall in line with the principle of sustainable agriculture. How? First of all, we are enhancing biodiversity around agricultural field. So that means it will promote protection of environment, right? Also, because biodiversity is being enhanced, so it will promote ecosystem services, right? So if ecosystem services are getting promoted, the agricultural field will need lesser input from external side, right? So that means this will also promote this objective, best use of non-renewable resources. So this practice is basically in line with the principles of sustainable agriculture. Let's see the second practice that says use of dhancha, cowpea, sun hemp, etc. in the agricultural field to promote soil fertility. This is also correct. These three are basically very well known green manure, right? So if we are using green manure to promote soil fertility, what it will do, it will reduce the use of chemical fertilizer, right? So this will also fall into this category, best use of non-renewable resources, and also since we are using less chemical fertilizer, it will protect the environment also. So this practice again will fall in line with the principles of sustainable agriculture. Now let's see the third practice that is given here, frequent plowing to increase soil aeration and nutrient availability, right? This will not be in line with the principles of sustainable agriculture. Why? Because frequent plowing, so let's say this is the soil, once we plow the soil, it gets broken into smaller pieces, right? This is what plowing means. So once it gets broken into smaller pieces, right, it becomes susceptible to erosion because moving air and water can pick these smaller fragments of soil and transport it to some other places, right? So plowing makes the soil susceptible to erosion, right? Also what happens that because of plowing, the underlying organic matter, they get exposed to external environment, right? And that leads to loss of organic matter, right? So that means frequent plowing is not in line with the principles of sustainable agriculture. So third is not correct. So the correct answer here is 1 and 2 only, A, right? Now let's see the next question, that is question 88. It says below is a map of peninsular India with 4 areas labeled 1, 2, 3 and 4, right? So a map is given here and 4 areas that are labeled 1, 2, 3 and 4 are given, and the question is asking which of the above areas is most likely to have tropical deciduous forest, right? So basically 4 areas are given and we have to identify which of these 4 areas is most likely to have tropical deciduous forest, right? So this is a map of peninsular India. So one can easily identify that these regions are basically the region of Western Ghat, right? This will be Western Ghat region, right? So Western Ghats, we all know that area of high rainfall, right? They receive rainfall more than 200 centimeters. So these regions will have evergreen and semi-evergreen forest, right? The areas of Western Ghat will have high rainfall and that's why they will have evergreen and semi-evergreen forest, right? So that means one is not correct. It will not have deciduous forest. Now let's see the next area, that is area 2. These areas are lying adjacent to the area having evergreen and semi-evergreen forest, right? So these are adjacent to the area 1, right? And we all know that tropical deciduous forests are found in the areas that are adjacent to evergreen and semi-evergreen forest, right? So 2 is most likely to have deciduous forest, right? So that means 2 is the most likely answer here. But let's see the other 2 areas as well. So if we see the fourth area is basically a coastal area, right? So it is most likely to have littoral and swamp forest, right? So that means 4 is also not correct. Area 3, if you see, is basically will basically lie in the rain shadow area of both Arabian Sea branch monsoon and Bay of Bengal monsoon, right? So this will be basically a rain shadow area where there will be very scanty rainfall, right? So that means this area is likely to have tropical thorn forest, right? So that means the correct answer here will be B. Area 2 is most likely to have tropical deciduous forest, right? Now if you see, this question is basically demanding again the knowledge of map, right? So whenever you are studying any topic of geography, you have to use maps and diagrams, right? Because UPSC can use maps to frame questions like this. And in fact, if you see, this question is based on the map that is given in your NCERT book. This is the map of natural vegetation that is given in NCERT, and if you see, this part has been selected to frame the question. The question is having this part and these areas have been labeled 1, 2, 3 and 4, right? So this type of things can be done by UPSC also, right? So you have to pay attention to maps and diagrams, right? Now let's see the next question, that is question 89. It says, consider the following statements. Statement 1, Coriolis force has the effect of causing deflection rightward in northern hemisphere and leftward in southern hemisphere, right? Second statement says, Earth rotates on its axis from the west to east, right? So basically this is a question from the topic, again climatology, and as we have discussed just now that this is a very important topic from prelims exam point of view, and this particular question is based on the concept of Coriolis force, right? So let's first see the underlying concept and then we will come back to our question, right? So what is Coriolis force or Coriolis effect? So let's say this is our earth, right? And this is equator, right? So as we all know, the earth rotates on its axis from west to east, right? So this is earth rotation direction, right? Let's say we pick another latitude here, right? This is another latitude different from equator, and we pick 2 points, one on equator, let's say this is A and this is point B, right? So both these points A and B will have same rotational speed because they are lying on earth, right? They are part of the same earth, so rotational speed of these 2 points will be same, right? That means omega or rotational speed will be same, right? But this point A has to travel a larger circle in order to complete one rotation, right? Because equator is the largest circle, right? So that means this point A will have to travel a larger distance in order to complete one rotation, and as compared to A, this point B will have to travel a shorter distance in order to complete one rotation, right? So although these 2 points A and B will have same rotational speed, their horizontal speed will be different. Point A will be having larger horizontal speed. Horizontal speed means the speed with which it travels horizontally, right, from west to east. So what linear horizontal speed of A will be higher than B, right? Now let's say there is a fluid mass which starts its motion from equator. Let's say this is an air mass, or let's say water. It starts its motion from equator poleward, right? So if earth is not rotating, for a moment suppose that earth is not rotating, then it will travel in a straight line and it will reach this point, right? But in reality earth is rotating, right? So what happens that the moment this air mass parcel starts its motion from equator, it picks up the horizontal velocity of the point that is lying on the equator, right? So air mass is initially lying at the equator. That means it will also be traveling along with the point that is lying beneath it. So that means it will have a component of horizontal velocity like this, right? Now it started moving poleward, so it picked one component of vertical speed, right? So its actual motion will be something like this. Since it is traveling vertically as well as horizontally, so it will actually travel like this and it will reach this point, right? So this air mass or water mass which was supposed to reach at this point will actually reach here, right? But now one can say that this point is also moving, right? That's correct. This point is also moving because it also has a component of horizontal speed, right? But the horizontal speed of this point on the earth will be lesser than this, right? Because this is lying on a latitude that is different from equator. So by the time this air reaches here, this point will actually reach up to, let's say, here only, right? So for this point, this air mass or water mass will appear deflected by this much distance, right? So this is rightward deflection, right, for this point. So that's why for any point in the north hemisphere, any fluid mass traveling from equator to pole appear deflected towards right, right? If this mass was traveling in, let's say, southern hemisphere, right, if it was traveling in southern hemisphere, it will have a component of horizontal velocity like this, so it will travel like this, right? So here the deflection will be towards left, right? So this deflection towards right and left in northern and southern hemisphere is what is known as Coriolis effect. Coriolis effect, right? And this is happening because of earth is rotating from west to east, right? So in order to account for this effect, Coriolis effect, scientists have devised a pseudo force that is called Coriolis force. Coriolis force. This is not a real force, this is an imaginary force, right? So in order to account for this Coriolis effect, scientists have devised a force called Coriolis force, which is an imaginary force, right? So This force, imaginary force, has the effect of deflecting towards right in the northern hemisphere and towards the left in the southern hemisphere, and all these are happening because of earth rotation from west to east. Now let's see the question given. Coriolis force has the effect of causing deflection rightward in northern hemisphere and leftward in southern hemisphere. We saw that this is a correct statement. Statement 2, earth rotates on its axis from the west to the east. Everyone knows that this is a correct statement, correct fact, and this is the reason this one is happening. That means correct answer here will be A. Both statements 1 and 2 are correct, and statement 2 is the correct explanation for statement 1, right? Now let's move on to our next question, that is question 90. It says, in the context of distribution of oceanic salinity, consider the following statements, right? Statement 1 says sea surface salinity in equatorial region is higher as compared to that in tropical regions. Statement 2 says, greater the rate of evaporation, higher is the salinity of oceans, right? So first of all, this is a question from the chapter Oceanography, right? 1 to 2 questions are asked almost every year from this chapter, right? And if you analyze the trend of previous year question, UPSC focuses on two, three areas within this chapter. First is ocean current, then tides and waves, and then distribution of temperature and salinity, right? So these are 2-3 areas from this chapter Oceanography that UPSC puts a special focus upon, and that's why a question based on distribution of oceanic salinity has been put in your test. So let's first see the underlying concept and then we will come back to our question, right? So what happens that salinity or oceanic salinity depends on multiple factors, right? And two prominent factors are precipitation and evaporation, right? If precipitation is high, salinity will be low. If evaporation is high, salinity will be high. How? If precipitation is high, that means more water will be added, right? So more water will be added, that means concentration of salt will go down, right? So that means salinity will go down. If evaporation is high, that means water is getting evaporated, so that means concentration of salt will become higher, so salinity will become high, right? So these are two facts related to salinity, factors affecting salinity, right? Now let's see what happens to salinity on different latitude. So let's say this is our equator and this is tropic, right? This is tropic of Cancer, Capricorn and equator, right? So we all know that equatorial region gets rainfall on almost daily basis, right? High rainfall, that means high precipitation, right? Equatorial region gets rainfall almost on daily basis, so that means precipitation is high here. As compared to equator, these two tropical regions will have lower precipitation. Here precipitation is high, right? So because of this high precipitation in equatorial region, what happens that humidity in these areas are high, right? So if humidity is high, that means that will lead to less evaporation, right? Evaporation will be low. Why? Because if air is humid, water will not be able to evaporate, right? As compared to equator, tropical region have high evaporation, evaporation here will be high because these two areas have relatively cleaner sky. Humidity here will be low as compared to equator, right? So low precipitation in tropical region will mean that salinity will be high, and high evaporation in tropical region will again mean that salinity will be high, right? So both these factors in tropical regions are contributing toward high salinity. So this is the reason tropics have high salinity as compared to equator, right? Now let's come back to our question. Sea surface salinity in equatorial region is higher. This is not correct. In equatorial region it will be lower. So that means this statement is incorrect. Second statement, the greater the rate of evaporation, the higher the salinity of ocean. This is correct. We just discussed it now. So that means the correct answer here will be D. Statement 1 is incorrect, but statement 2 is correct, right? Now let's move on to our next question. This is about, says, consider the following statements regarding makhana, right? So makhana has been in news recently. First of all, this is a question from the topic agriculture, and as we have discussed just now that 1 to 2 questions are asked almost every year from this topic, right? And makhana has been in news recently because Union Budget 2025-26 has announced to set up a makhana board in Bihar, right? That's why makhana has been in news and it becomes important for your upcoming prelims examination. So let's read the given statements. First statement says makhana is the dried edible seed of lotus flower. This is not correct, right? So makhana in English is called foxnut and it is also called lotus seed, right? So because of this name lotus seed, people generally believe that makhana is dried edible seed of lotus flower, right? But this is not correct actually. Makhana is basically dried edible seed of water lily, right? Water lilies grow in freshwater ponds and look similar to lotus flower, but they are different from lotus flower. And if I may show you makhana cultivation, these are water lilies from where makhana seeds are plucked and then dried, right? So first statement is not correct. Makhana is dried edible seed of water lily, not lotus flower. Second statement, Bihar is the largest producer of makhana in India. This is correct. In fact, Bihar produces around 90% of total makhana in India, and that's the reason makhana board is being set up in Bihar, right? So the correct answer here will be 2 only, B, right? Now let's move on to the next question, that is question 92. It says consider the following statement. First statement, the Gulf of Mexico is notably influenced by the loop current, which plays a significant role in regional weather patterns and development of tropical cyclones, right? So this statement is about Mexican loop current. So let's first understand what it is and then we will come back to question. So this is a map showing North America and South America and Atlantic region, right? And this is Mexican Gulf of Mexico. This is the region Gulf of Mexico, right? So if you see, the ocean current in this Gulf of Mexico flows in a circular fashion, something like this, right? And this is what is called loop current, right? It is something like gyres which rotate in a circular fashion. So this Mexican loop current, what it does, that it draws water from this Caribbean Ocean. This, if you see, is Caribbean Ocean, Caribbean Sea, and it lies closer to equator, so it has warm water, right? So what this Mexican loop current does is it takes water from Caribbean Sea, it rotates it in a circular fashion, and then it pushes this water, warm water, through Florida Strait. This strait is Florida Strait, like this, right? This becomes Florida current, and then it advances further to become Gulf Stream, right? So overall impact of this loop current in Gulf of Mexico is that it is taking warm water from Caribbean Sea and then it is transporting it to this region, right? So that means warm water has come from here to here, right? Now this latitude wise, this region should have been colder, right? Because this is away from equator, right? But Mexican loop current brings warm water from Caribbean Sea. So because of that, temperature of this region increases, right? So if temperature is increasing, it will have obvious repercussion on the regional weather pattern, right? And also, since ocean water temperature is increasing, it will also aid in development of tropical cyclone. So Mexican loop current helps in development of tropical cyclone in these regions, which are called hurricanes, right? So if we see the first statement now, Gulf of Mexico is notably influenced by loop current, which plays a significant role in regional weather patterns and development of tropical cyclone. This is correct, right? Now let's read the second statement. Panama Canal's water dynamics does not have a significant impact on salinity and circulation of adjacent ocean basins, right? This is also a correct statement. Let's see how. So if you see, this is the Panama Canal. Panama Canal, which is located between North America and South America, and it joins two ocean basins. First is Atlantic Ocean Basin, and second is Pacific Ocean Basin, right? So these two ocean basins, Atlantic and Pacific, they are very vast in size, right? And in comparison, this size of this Panama Canal is very small, right? So obviously water dynamics in this Panama Canal will not have significant impact on these two ocean basins, right? So this is what this second statement is saying, right? So this is a correct statement. That means the correct answer here will be both 1 and 2, C, right? Now let's see the next question, that is question 94. It says, consider the following islands situated in the Indian Ocean region. The three islands are given: Seychelles, Mauritius, Maldives. What is the correct sequence of these islands from north to south, right? So this is a simple map based question, right? And it can easily be solved by looking at the map of Indian Ocean region. So let's see the map of Indian Ocean region. If you see, this is Maldives, this is Seychelles, and this is Mauritius, right? If you can see these islands on your atlas also. So these are the order of their location. That means the correct order from north to south is Maldives, followed by Seychelles, followed by Mauritius, right? So here first will come Maldives, that is 3, then Seychelles 1, and then finally Mauritius. So the correct answer here is 3, 1 and 2, A, right? Now let's move on to the next question. This is question 95. Consider the following alignments of Sun, Earth and Moon. Two alignments of Sun, Earth and Moon are given, and the question is asking which of the following is correct in respect of given alignments. Options are about height of high tides, all the options are talking about height of high tides in both the alignments, right? So this is a question from the chapter oceanography, and this particular question is based on the concept of tide, right? So let's first see the underlying concept and then we will come back to question. So what is tide? Tide is basically periodic rise and fall of water on the earth's surface, right? And how it happens? It happens because of gravitational pull of moon and sun, right? So let's say this is our earth surface, this is our earth, right? This is moon and this is sun, right? And let's say this is the water surface surrounding our earth, right? So what happens that both moon and sun attract these waters. So moon, let's say moon will attract water here towards it, right? Sun will also attract water here towards it, right? So basically sun's force is lesser, so let's say this is the sun's gravitational pull. So these two forces result into, let's say, this force. This will have a vertical component and this leads to rise of water here. So that means water here will bulge upward, something like this, right? That means height of water will increase at this place, and this is what is called high tide, right? And in order to create the bulge, more water is needed here, right? So that means water from some other area will rush towards this bulge, right? So let's say water from this area has rushed from here to here, so water level here will go down, right? So this will be the area of low tide, right? So this is the basic concept behind tides, and it occurs because of gravitational pull of moon and sun, right? So usually tides occur almost every day on Earth's surface, but there are three important alignments of sun, moon and earth on which the height of tides are either unusually high or either unusually low, right? What are those alignments? So let's say this is our earth, this is sun, right? And let's say moon is rotating around earth in this orbit, right? So there are four positions of moon on which height of tides are either unusually high or low, right? These are the four positions, right? So these are moon positions basically, right? So let's say what happens in this case. In this case, let's say this is the water surface surrounding our earth, right? Now what happens in this case is that moon will attract water here in this direction, sun will also attract water here in this direction. So the gravitational pull of moon and sun gets combined here. So in this alignment, water, the height of high tide will be unusually high, right? Now let's see what happens in this case. In this case, moon will attract water here towards itself and sun will attract water here towards itself, right? So it appears that the moon's attraction and sun's attraction will cancel each other, but what happens that moon's attraction is almost more than 2 times of sun's attraction, right? So the net resultant of these two will be towards this, right? And that is completely vertical. So in this case also water rises unusually high, right? So these two positions when water is rising high are called spring tides. In this case, the height of high tides will be higher than usual cases and height of low tide will be lower than usual cases. What happens at these two positions? These two positions are called neap tides. In this case, the attraction of moon will be towards this and sun will attract toward this. The resultant will be something like this, right? And its vertical component will be only this much, right? And this vertical component actually becomes lesser than these two cases, right? So in these two positions, the height of high tides will be lower than usual, right? So these two positions are called neap tides, right? So in case of neap tides, height will be lower than usual, and in case of spring tides, height will be higher than usual, right? Now let's come back to our question. If you see, both the alignments given are basically indicating towards spring. So spring tides occurs when sun, earth and moon are aligned in a straight line. So in both these alignments, if you see, sun, earth and moon are falling in a straight line, right? So both these are cases of spring tides, right? So that means in both the alignments, height of high tides will be higher than usual in both the alignments. So C is the correct answer here, right? So with this we have come to the end of our discussion. I hope you find this discussion useful, and I wish you all the best for your upcoming exams. Thank you very much.